What is the most prestigious club competition in European football? It is quite obviously the UEFA Champions League. Founded in 1955 as the European Cup, rebranded to the Champions League in 1992, this competition has given us some of the greatest footballing memories. Whether it's the miracle of Istanbul in 2005, that Bale overhead kick, or the emergence of a new world football super club, moments like these along with the enormous prize money make the Champions League an utter dream for any club in Europe. The European Cup at the time was such a success that they implemented a second-tier competition known as the UEFA Cup. This would be rebranded to the Europa League in 2009. The Europa League follows the same formatting as the Champions League, gives slightly inferior clubs based on their league table finishing a chance to actually still compete in Europe. And from all of UEFA's success with the Champions League and the Europa League, they even decided to open the third-tier competition, being the Europa Conference League. This was founded in 2021 and gives even more teams a chance to compete in Europe. It's important to know that the Conference League follows a very similar formatting to the Europa League and the Champions League too. Now personally for me, it doesn't get better than watching the Champions League. Something about playing a night game against Europe's best teams, and the prospect of a grand final playing at some of Europe's best stadiums. And as for the format of the Champions League, I've never really thought that was an issue. As of next year, the formatting for the Champions League, the Europa League and the Conference League will all change. Today we're going to take a look at exactly what the changes are, how this will affect each individual team, and I guess at the end address questions or just thoughts about this in general. So the first change across all three competitions is that there will now be 36 teams entering the competitions rather than 32. The current group stage will be replaced by a league phase, where all 36 teams will compete. Each team will play 8 matches rather than 6, 2 from each of the 4 seeding pots, 1 home and 1 away. This means that rather than playing the same 3 teams twice in the group stage, you'll play 8 different teams once. But this is different in the Conference League. The league phase will require teams to only play 6 matches against 6 different opponents from one of the 6 pots, differing from the 4 seeding pots in the Champions League and the Europa League. Teams that finish in position 1 to 8 qualify directly to the round of 16. Teams finishing 9th to 24th will have to play each other in the knockout playoff round, and the winners move forward into the round of 16. Teams finishing in positions 25 to 36 will be eliminated altogether from all competitions, meaning that there is no possibility of dropping down to the Europa League or even the Conference League. And from there, the knockout phase is exactly the same as it is now. There is no change at all. From the round of 16, each teams will play each other twice, 1 home leg and 1 away leg. The aggregate winner will then go on to the quarterfinal, semi-final, and then concluding in a single leg final in a neutral ground. Somebody will pick out a team and then the computer will generate the 8 fixtures. Some people might see this as being a little bit dodgy considering, well, oh, the computer did the draws. Well, what does that really mean? Whether you believe that or not, I guess is up to you, and I don't think people are going to be happy about it. As I mentioned before, there's now 36 teams that qualify for the Champions League rather than 32. So how were those extra 4 slots allocated? Well, the 2 countries that perform best overall in European competitions, meaning that the coefficient increases, will gain an extra slot, meaning that the Premier League will potentially be able to have 5 qualifying slots for the Champions League. Of course, that would require English clubs to actually do well in Europe this season. And as for the other 2 slots, well, one of them will be awarded to a domestic champion by extending from 4 to 5 the number of clubs qualifying via the champions path of the competition's qualifying process, which will consist of 4 qualifying rounds. And the other one will go to the club ranked 3rd in the championship of the association, in 5th position in the access list, which is determined by UEFA Association Club Efficient Ranking. I wish UEFA could have translated those 2 explanations into English as well. So if each team in the Champions League and the Europa League are now playing 2 extra games in the previous group stage and the new league phase, and then potentially another 2 games they'll have to play if they finish between 9th and 24th in the league phase, so they can try to advance to the quarterfinals, there might be a few questions as to how they're going to fit all of the extra games in. Although UEFA are adamant that all Champions League games will still be played on Tuesday and Wednesday, and Europa League and Conference League games to be played on Thursday, and not really much is going to change. Apart from the final league phase games where they'll all be played simultaneously, similarly to the Premier League and I'm sure probably other leagues across Europe. UEFA claim that they've decided to make these changes because of a few different reasons. One of them being that you're going to play a range of different teams of different qualities. Another one being because there's 36 teams that have been dumped into one league, it's going to be very, very tight and everyone's going to be changing positions very, very quickly. However, I think a lot of people are of a slightly different opinion for the reasons. One being money, more games equals more money, and that's pretty simple. Now, some people say this is just basically a grand gesture from UEFA, basically saying thank you for staying with us and not moving over to the Super League that was proposed over the past couple of years. If you don't know what the Super League is, basically, to summarise it, it was a breakaway league proposed in 2021, aiming to rival UEFA competitions such as the Champions League. And essentially, realistically, what it was an invite-only money grab. There was a massive amount of opposition to it, with basically no football fan in the world actually wanting the Super League, leading to some people speculating that the reason for these changes in the Champions League is down to people rejecting the Super League and staying loyal to UEFA. Now, what I think is very interesting is the Champions League and UEFA competitions, even if they were rebranded slightly, stayed pretty much the same for a very long period of time. A couple of years ago, we saw that they removed away goals from the knockout stages, which I personally wasn't really a fan of. I liked away goals. I understand why they removed them, because basically it just became too tactical and too cagey to a point where if a team went and scored one goal away from home, they would just sit back in the home leg and literally just put everybody behind the ball, and it's not entertaining to watch. That being said, I just liked the concept of away goals, so I was not very happy about that. And if I'm being completely honest, I like the way the Champions League is at the moment. Is this change to the league phase rather than the group stage going to be a bad thing? Well, time will tell. I don't think it probably won't be. It's just, I don't like change. Of course, we also have to acknowledge the fact that in the previous group stage, if you finished third, you were going to the Europa League. Whereas there's no possible way you can actually end up in the Europa League from the Champions League in this new format. And honestly, I think I am a fan of this change. Let's be honest, if you were good enough to qualify for the Champions League, but not good enough to qualify for the knockout stages, then I think you deserve to go out. At the same time, I do see how it was a very good thing for maybe clubs that don't always get into the Champions League, and it might just be a one-off occasion, or clubs that never really get through to the knockout stages. The Europa League is always, a nice consolation for at least having a good go. I'm also a little bit confused as to why the Champions League and the Europa League have 4 pots to choose from, and the Conference League has 6. The Europa League and the Champions League, where you play 8 games in the league phase, and in the Conference League you only play 6. To me, it would only make sense if all 3 competitions were to follow the same format. Now, I acknowledge that the quality, status and calibre of team going into the Conference League is completely different from those in the Champions League, maybe not so from the Europa League. And there obviously probably is well thought out reasoning behind having the format slightly different. But it just seems a little bit strange considering they're also having the same amount of teams. Now, something that I really don't like the sound of, and that I'm really wary of at the moment, is the fact that the Saudi Pro League have expressed the massive interest in joining the UEFA Champions League, which is crazy because the UEFA Champions League is a tournament for European clubs. And we all know how much money the Saudis have, and it is pretty much unlimited. UEFA being partial to money, and the Saudi Pro League having unlimited money, doesn't seem like a great combination. Granted, there aren't really any advancements on UEFA's side. I am just wary of that happening, and with changes being made to the Champions League, it could almost be interpreted as preparation, or at least just testing how people's reaction will be to change. So, what now? I guess we just sit here and wait for next season like little guinea pigs. Yeah, sure, we'll be playing a couple of extra games, and we'll be playing a variation of other teams as well. If you don't do so great, you don't have the chance of dropping down to the Europa League. But in theory, it still works. None of the changes are really that bad. The only thing I am a little bit concerned about is having the Champions League draw partially automated. I'm sure it will be fine. It will be audited and everything. But it still seems a little bit, it wouldn't be the first time that UEFA have been accused of giving certain teams more favourable draws. Another concern I do have about playing more games in the Champions League is, especially in the Premier League, there's been so many more injuries this season, and that can basically just be attributed to the referees adding more and more time on at the end of the game, like they're being told to do. If you're in the Champions League, you have to play 2 more games, and potentially even 4 more games. One of those potential 4 could go to extra time and penalties. But realistically, we can speculate about the motives of UEFA for changing the competition, and it's probably just for the betterment of the game. But the answer is, we'll never really know why. If you did enjoy this video, then maybe you should check out my previous video when we look at the downfall of VAR. Well, this video did take a long time to make, so if you did enjoy, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.